Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. Coming on to part 3 of the most frequently asked questions. So here we proceed with question number 11.
How many questions did you answer in your INI CET?
Alright. I used the strategy that we have to answer more. But since INI CET does have negative marking, meaning 1/3 of the marks are deducted if you are wrong, I used to believe that if I could eliminate a single option, then attempt that question. So out of 200 questions asked, you have to cross 185. There is no doubt in that. If you are able to cross 190 with confidence, that's very good. You are aiming for a very good rank. So if you are able to eliminate one particular option, then attempt that question. This was my strategy. Now basically I used to divide when I used to write my question during my exam. I used to think that okay, I know the answer to this question, I will mark this answer and then not flag it for or mark it for review. But if I was doubtful, I used to mark it for review. When I used to finish the exam, I used to see how many questions did I attempt. If I crossed 185, then good. I used to see those marked for review and think very carefully. Am I able to eliminate a single option? If I am able to eliminate that particular options, definitely go for that question, attempt that question, mark it. You will end up in positive note if you are doing 10 such questions. But if you are not able to eliminate even a single option, it means you are completely unaware that what particular concept or fact is being asked. Then I used to not mark that particular answer. I used to mark around 190 plus or minus 5 answers. In the final day, I did mark 193, I believe. 193 or 194 out of 200. So, Puppy, how many questions to answer in INI CET?
I actually follow a slightly different strategy to this. What I used to do is, in my GTs, I had seen, I used to answer around 198 to 200 in my GTs, and I was a person who would just look at a question. Around 150 questions, once you're well prepared, you will have an idea about, the concepts, the questions. It is just that, there was something lacking in your preparation, or there was some conceptual misunderstanding, because of which you would make mistakes in those 150 questions. And obviously there'll be 50 questions which you are not so confident, you don't know those concepts, or you don't know those memory based questions, or they were very tricky. So they are there. So 50 questions, what you need to do is what I followed. If it was a conceptual question, and because you've read your concepts well enough, I would go ahead, take a choice, and then I would mark the answer if it was a conceptual question. If it was a memory based question, if I'm able to rule out an option, I would mark it. And tricky questions, obviously, you have to mark, guys. There's no other option. The examiners are meant to trick you, and you are supposed to get tricked. So this is how it works. So try to avoid silly mistakes in these tricky questions, right? So based on this, towards the end of the exam, I would have hardly 3 to 4 questions which were like out of the box. I've not heard of the topic. I've not heard of anything related to the question. Even in those questions, sometimes I've even come across questions where they will tell that patient is having conjunctivitis, and the answer, one of the options will have something related to conjunctivitis. Sometimes it's just that presence of mind which you need to mark an answer. It's not necessary that you need to know the concept, you need to know the meaning of the options. It's not necessary, guys. Sometimes, just read the question, you will understand they're talking something about this, and the same word reappears in the options. I would go ahead and take a choice and mark it, unlike Api, where he would not take such questions. Like, unless he is very confident about the topic, he would not take it. I was one person, if I just understood something related to the question and I am seeing similar options, I would go ahead and take a choice. So I think it's a very personalized choice. When you are giving your GTs, you need to analyze yourself, that whether you're an overdoer or an underdoer. Even for an underdoer, I think 180 questions is a must, because I've met people where people have answered just 180 or 185 and they've done wonders in the exam. So analyze yourself beyond 180, how many you're supposed to answer. During GTs, when you are doing this, you will understand that you are an underdoer or an overdoer, and stick to it. In the exam, even if the paper is difficult or even if the paper is easy, stick to it, that if you're an underdoer, don't overdo in the exam suddenly, because it might fetch you too much of negative marking. If you're overdoer, if the paper is out of the box, like you do not know the topics at all, you do not know the concepts at all, come down to 180, because I have not seen a paper in past 2-3 years where you are completely unaware of the topic and which contains more than 10 questions, guys. So keep it in your mind that you have to answer more than 180. After that, take a call in the exam. So we'll move on to the next question.
Alright. Puppy, how many questions to answer in NEET PG?
Coming to NEET PG, guys, NEET PG, these googly questions are less, they usually stick on to their concepts which they've been asking in the previous year papers. So I don't think in NEET PG you'll get too many googly questions where you don't know the topic. They're very few. In my NEET PG, I had answered all 200 questions. Like, sometimes, yes, they give out of the box options that you've not heard about those conditions at all. But go ahead, read the question, guys. It will have a clue, it will give you a hint about what they're talking, so you will be able to pick an answer. But again, if you are an underdoer and then you're able to score good because your negative markings are less, stick to it. Even in that, I think you should follow the same strategy. 180 is a must. Beyond that, push yourself to whatever you can. Whatever you have done in GT, stick to it. If you're an underdoer, be an underdoer. If you're an overdoer, be an overdoer. I personally was an overdoer. I had answered all 200 questions. We'll move on to the next question now. So Appi, what do you think? What is the strategy you used while answering the MCQs in the exam?
Alright, I already said this before that I used to look at the options first before the questions. I realized that this strategy works because I was a person who was making very huge number of silly mistakes when I attempted my first initial grand test, especially the first 5 grand tests. The number of silly mistakes that I analyzed was a huge number. I used to cross 50. So I realized that reading the option first gave me a better score, meaning the number of silly mistakes came down from 50 to 35. The immediate next test, when I followed this particular strategy, read the options first, then read the question carefully. As soon as you read the first 4 options, you realize that when you start reading the question, a 58-year-old male, so based on the age and the gender alone, one option is eliminated. So I used to narrow down the answer and put it at that particular point. So I always believed that read the answers first, meaning the options, and then read the question. Of course, if the strategy does change if the question has a very long stem. If the question has very long stem, remember that this is an easy question. Do not be scared. Meaning the examiner has given you all the information. He is giving you his entire biodata that please answer this question. It's an easy question. Do not lose hope. So such questions are easy. Do not lose hope. Just read stay calm. Do not change the strategy. Just look at the 4 options, start reading the questions. By the half of question, I am sure that most of you guys will already come to only 2 options. And in the next half, you will easily rule out the other option because the information given is so much that you need not work too hard to get that particular question right. Coming to image based options, image based also I used to follow a similar strategy. Look at the options quickly, then look at the image and then mark the correct answer. This helped me reduce the number of silly mistakes because I was a person who was making huge number of silly mistakes. You cannot be making many silly mistakes if you want a very good rank. So try to reduce, stick on to what works for you. Find the initial GTs that you give are to find out where you are lacking, what type of person you are, how you attempt the questions, and improve on that so that it becomes your strong point. Alright, Poppy, what is the strategy you used while answering MCQs?
While coming to me, guys, what I did was slightly different. It was almost the same. I would read the options first, obviously, and then I would read the last line of the question. Because what I've seen, because I got a rank of 120 and I was rank 1 also, and there was very minute changes which I made in answering the question. So I would read the options, I would read the last line at an extreme slow speed, because I figured out that all the tricky part of the question lied in that last line, like they would use words like is, not, which is not, or all except, or sometimes the question is altogether different. They give a different image, and they'll ask you a question that what is the image indicating of. So all that question which is written above, like lines of question, would just be a waste. And there are a lot of such questions, especially in INI set, more than NEET I've seen. So what I did was read the options, read the last line extremely carefully, like every word, with too much of consciousness. Then look at the image, then go ahead and read the question. And trust me, guys, when I used this, even before I read the question, I knew the answer for at least 40 to 50% of the questions, I guess. I knew the answer. Like, I read the last line, I looked at the image, I looked at the options. I was about 80% sure that my answer would be this. I would just read the rest of the question for confirmation. So this was one of the strategies. Other than this, I used something called a 2 hour 1 hour rule. So what I used to do is, in 3 hours of exam, I would divide it into first 2 hours and last 1 hour. In the first 2 hours, I would finish the entire question paper, like all the 200 questions, in one go. Like, I would do the strategy which I told you, I would mark the answer, go to the next. So, but still, when you're using this strategy, you will have a set of questions which you're not sure of, or it needs some amount of thinking, or it's, I told you guys, right? Like 150 questions are something which you will be able to do in the first go, another 50 questions you will not be, because they're slightly difficult or they're tricky or whatever it is. You have not heard about the concepts. So, I would do around 150 questions in the first 2 hours, and I would dedicate the last 50 questions in the last 1 hour. And I've seen, when you are reading the same question for the second time, your brain processes in a different way, because it has already processed in one way and you're not able to get an answer. In the second time, when you're looking at the same question, it processes differently. And most of the times in these 50 questions, you will be able to answer around 20 to 30 questions with confidence that, yeah, I knew this. It's just that I didn't process it in a right way for this question. So after that, in the last 1 hour, again I would divide it into 30 minutes and 30 minutes. 30 minutes I would go through all these 50 questions in a rapid go, and I would be able to answer another 20-25. So in the last half an hour, I would look at these extremely difficult questions, and I would take them slightly slow, and I would take a call whether to answer, what not to answer. And those 30 questions will be difficult for everyone in the world, guys, so do not worry about it. So that is a bonus. What you have in your hands is around 150 to 170 questions which are framed for you to answer based on your knowledge. So go ahead, look at those questions. Don't concentrate on all 200 questions. It's not possible, guys. It's not humanly possible. The paper is not set in such a way. You have to concentrate on the 170 questions which are meant to be answered with your knowledge. So coming to our next question, guys.
Alright. Puppy, what is the difference in strategy for preparation for NEET PG and INI CET? Since, guys, I didn't write NEET PG, I think Puppy will be most equipped to answer this question.
Yes, guys, I had given both NEET PG as well as INI CET in 2021. Uh, Actually, the only difference which I found was, for NEET PG, they basically concentrated more on the third year and fourth year subjects, as most of you guys already know. And for INI CET, it is basically the first years and the second years. So if you're able to do the first year and second year subjects better than most of them, you are done with the NEET INI CET course, obviously. But for NEET PG, it's more of this final year and more like clinical based questions, and they give you scenarios and they're very lengthy questions. Mainly third year and final year subjects which you have to revise. So just when you're revising in the last 1 month before the exam, see to it that you plan accordingly. So when you're doing INI CET, see to it that the first years and second years get equal amount of time as the medicine, surgery, obs, gynae, what you're giving. And obviously, in INI CET, the biostats play a very important role. Like, I've seen questions coming up to 10, 15 questions from just PSM, and biostats form a major chunk of it. Whereas when you come to NEET PG, all these programs and everything plays an equal role. It's not like biostats is more, this is less. PSM in totality is important for both NEET PG as well as INI CET. And when you are revising for NEET PG, see to it that the final year subjects get around 5 to 6 days you can take for medicine, surgery, OBS. Max 2 days for anat, physio, and all that, because anat, physio would be a part of the question, but just an pure anat based question or a patho based question is less likely in a NEET PG. So now I think we've answered most of the questions which people had DM'd us about our preparation strategies. So if you still have any more doubts, or you guys want to ask us anything in detail about your personal questions, you can just leave a comment below. We would answer to every comment which we would be getting, guys.
Alright guys, that's it for today.